everybody, good afternoon and welcome to Tremco Live, where we're socially distant but technically connected. I'm Marcy Tyler, the Director of Building Science for Tremco, and I am joined by my co-hosts.
And I'm Paul Hugenbaum. I'm the President of Tremco Construction Products Group. Marcy, a tremendous collection of companies, brands, systems, products, and of course, most of all people all over the world. Most
of all people, I love it. So if you guys have been joining us, last week we began the month of October and we started our discussions about resiliency. We had a great guest on, Jason Wigboldy, and when we talk about resiliency, I think we're going to get into that. It can be defined in many different ways, and kind of how we defined it for last week's broadcast. We talked about that ability of, how durable is your structure if you're starting to poke a whole bunch of holes in it, right? As we talked about with the fasteners that he represents from Holdfast and all the testing we did to verify that performance.
Yes, interesting. Resilience, it doesn't mean durability. So I think here's another one, Marcy. We often talk about mode of failure. So the metaphor I like to use, if you just pull a thread on a sweater, does the whole sweater come apart? I would say that sweater's not terribly resilient. So,
it would not be, right?
So mode of failure, and I always talk about elegant versus catastrophic. Obviously the sweater analogy, pull the thread, sweater comes off, that's catastrophic. Elegant, the example I always love is knotty tear.
Knotty tear, yep.
On our simple seal capabilities. What do you think about mode of failure?
Well, and I think, it's funny, you do talk about that sweater and the thread, and every time you do that, I go back to being a little kid, and I might have told you this for sledding, and I remember we were getting too close to a tree, so I went like this with my mitten, and part of the thread got caught on the tree, and it unraveled all the way down the hill. So I think of that, like, my mittens were not resilient, right? They were moisture sensitive, they weren't giving me any kind of waterproofing, they really weren't giving me any kind of an air barrier either, right? So I guess I go back to that, and we talk about, jacket of protection, obviously, yes, mode of failure is critical too, because not only do you want to choose the right technologies so you're protecting your structure, but you also want to understand how and when it could fail.
Yes, which, I had another note here about, can it take a beating?
Yeah.
Right? So back to your concept of what's the mode of failure. So mode of failure would occur when you take a beating. And of course, that's where our test wall is invaluable, right? Because there's so many opinions about what happens when it takes a beating. But we often on our test wall say we don't just test the standards, we test the failure.
Exactly.
So then you know the mode of failure.
Exactly. So. And that, I had a couple opportunities this week to have conversations with a variety of different firms, and that was exactly what we talked about. Is we love that ability of having people come into our test facility, and we want to see it fail, because we want to put it to an extreme condition. Well, we want to see if it would fail, where. If it doesn't fail, that's even better. I guess I should have said that.
If we can't get it to fail, we're going to break our test wall.
Well, that's true. That's true.
We've done that before.
Yeah, we have broken the plexiglass. Steve Kranick,
Yeah. So I have one more on resilience for you, which is, okay, if it fails, how's it fixed? So you and I talk a lot about a lot of systems and technology that have been built over many, many years that weren't designed to be fixable or restorable.
Yes.
And we as a company have really focused on those applications to say, wait a minute, can we restore those? Can we fix those? So I think this whole idea of how do you recover, right? And resiliency is, do you recover at all? Can you recover well? And for us, of course, that's restoration.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I throw this out to all of you, how do you define resiliency, and what are you looking for? We got a couple other Fridays in the month of October with lots of great content, but we'd absolutely love to hear from you as to what you'd like to see. Now, today we're going to focus on an area of the building, that glass and glazing area of our buildings. And I was talking to somebody yesterday that is a property manager, and she's having a lot of issues, and she said to the point where people wore those, you ever see those umbrella hats?
Yes.
So they put those on to show her that there's a problem if we have to wear these umbrella hats on the inside, So we also might see water management. I think I have a picture of the airport where they had this big funnel underneath one of their atriums collecting water.
You and I do that. We walk through public spaces and we're just always looking up for things like that.
Exactly.
Which of course for us is problems we can solve.
Exactly. So we're excited about this whole month and the content we can bring you in, of course, specifically today. So Paul, we got a couple things we definitely want to be able to share with everybody as it relates to our topic today. And I know it's hard for Paul. He's got lots of favorites, but I think this is one of his favorites.
It's certainly in the running for top 3 or 5.
Maybe we'll do that one of these days. Is your top 10 or something like that.
Yeah, I just remember my introduction to this. This is before we had engaged the customer to solve it. And our field sales team, this is Puerto Rico, right, that was there, happened to be visiting us in the U.S. And I was sitting there minding my own business, and they said, we need to talk to you about the Puerto Rico Convention Center. And they were from the roofing side of Tremco. And I looked at that and I was like, that sure looks like glazing to me, right? Even though obviously it functions as a roof. And I said, next step is let's partner with our CS&W division.
Yep.
And that's really the backbone of this case study. But that's a facility, and I'm not sure if you'll play the video now, Marcy.
I'm gonna surprise you with that.
But it's a facility that leaked from the time it was built, right? So it was designed in a manner well-intended, but it was designed in a manner that leaked from the very, very beginning. And we were able to do of course, put a fantastic solution and a terrific warranty in place. And then the next big hurricane rolled through and dry as a bone, it was a FEMA center. So talk about going from, I guess we'll call it rags to riches.
Yep, exactly. And just that ability to withstand what it needed to during that hurricane.
Yeah, that was incredible. I'm pretty sure it's a Cat 5, very, very high winds.
Very high winds, yeah.
Absolutely bone dry.
So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at what that information on now. So on our website, we have a variety of videos associated with just that, this project, and one that's much longer than what we're going to show you today. So definitely check out our YouTube channel. So it's the Tremco CPG YouTube channel. But let's see what we've got here.
The Puerto Rico Convention Center is easily the largest and most technologically advanced convention center in the Caribbean. Newly opened in 2005, the structure's unique design consists of 2 skylights. The upper portion, with its wave design, covers the exterior portions of the building. Over time, the skylight system has been put to the test in this tropical climate. The combination of movement and elements impacted the glazing seal at various points along the framework and hurricane clips of the system, causing many leaks throughout conditioned areas and the terrace sections. These stain marks belie additional damage from frequent leaking. Design engineers from the Tremco CS&W Glazing Solutions Group created a glazing restoration system comprised of Tremco Simple Seal Extrusion, a custom silicone overlay extrusion, and Spectrem 1 silicone sealant. As you can see from this rainstorm footage, the structure is dry and weather-tight from a successful restoration effort. In addition to mitigating damage during restoration and extended interruption to the convention center's activities, the solution provided considerable labor savings as the efficiencies of this install allowed the applicator to complete over 800 lineal feet of the gasket overlay system per day. The entire project was wrapped up in 94 continuous workdays by national building contractors.
There was 2 numbers I caught in that video, Paul. What about you?
Well, what are the 2 numbers?
Okay, 800 is the first one, and 94 was the other that I was catching.
And the 2, of course, are related, right? Because the lineal foot, the daily lineal foot production rate is, of course, tremendous.
Yep.
And it allowed for something to be completed really, really fast.
Really fast, exactly. Yeah. So 800 lineal feet per day and 94 contiguous work days.
So to build on the resilience theme, the other cool thing is that we're able to leave with them rolls of that material, because workmen will go up on there and at times they'll damage, they'll walk right on that structure. And so all they need to do if there's any damage to the membrane is just cut out a section, put the section in themselves, and they're off and running. So not only did they get a terrific restoration, long-term warranty, high performance, the ease of long-term maintenance right there on site with their own crews.
Exactly. And I think as we talked about resilience before we brought this up, I think it hits all those areas, right? You know, that ability to obviously withstand the hurricane force winds, you've got that performance level, that resiliency, but then it can also be fixed if need be, you know, for whatever reason. So love that one. And I love being able to bring that up. And Paul, I think I've told you this before, a lot of times when people look at Tremco, I think they think the roof, or they think waterproofing, or they think sealants, and this is a big area that we play in. And I think it's a critical part, obviously. I don't know too many buildings without windows. Right? There's not too many.
And it's interesting, Marcy, there's a tension between how to build a building, and I think human nature is more light. I'm a light person, right? More light is better, right? And then that really draws you to more windows. And we, of course, you and I know that there's a trade-off with energy efficiency.
Yes.
So the trick is, how can you build with lots of light and still maintain a very high level of efficiency?
And there's a lot of very interesting things that I learned yesterday that from a company called Canon Design, where they're actually designing these atriums that are structured in such a way that they will help the building, the way they're constructed, cool in the summer and heat in the winter. So I think there's a lot more to come, because I don't think we're getting away from glass. I don't think we're getting away from windows. But there's definitely a lot of interesting ways. And so here's just a whole bunch of pictures that represent, you know, large projects, small projects, and a lot of things in between. But back to getting that building being back to useful operations is a key part of it, and getting it back to being air and water tight is where we really play a huge part.
Yeah, we do a lot of, not only do we do this, Marcy, but we do a lot of things that are really unique.
Absolutely, yeah.
We'll share some of that today.
Yeah. So I always like that ability of providing, you know, your solution that's going to meet what you need on your project. And here is just 4, but there's any combination of these 4 that can occur. And you mentioned it already, customizable, right?
Yeah, and I think that's the key. What you hit on the key here, because we can really, quote, do anything. I always call these systems wet and dry.
Yep.
Right? So that, you know, in many cases, you know, there's the cliche, if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. Right?
Yeah.
And it's true. So I think one of the nice things for Tremco is we really have all the different systems, and we have the ability to do very, very fast custom work for you.
Exactly, and I think, and that customizable option, 3D printing plays a part in that. Our great design engineering team plays a part in that, and then communication with you, our customer, to get you to where you need to be from a performance perspective is a key part.
Glad you mentioned 3D. You know, one of my favorites again. But you know, when people look at gasketing, the ability for us to really quickly turn around custom profiles that are specifically engineered to your application is we really do stand alone in our ability to do that. And what used to take us, I don't know, 4 weeks each iteration, maybe about 4 months end to end, is something that, you know, if we full rank, you know, obviously, you know, we have a lot of work going on, but it's things we can turn around in days for you.
Exactly, and that capability of giving you these solutions and what comes with it, right? So we won't go into too much detail on this slide, but just the major takeaway here is we've got options for you. So of course, your beloved sealant, that's going to be something, that's your workhorse, right? It's going to be used a lot of times for that cutout and recaulk, no matter what your application is. It's used with the pre-cured silicone to adhere it in place, as well as that restoration overlay. And of course, we've got that whole system reset solution. If you need brand new gaskets, we have that as well. And I think the best way really to explain these is to walk through some testing, as well as just some case studies, just like that Puerto Rico Convention Center. So we didn't catch it. They used a combination of the restoration overlay, the pre-cured silicone, which is simple seal, and then the sealant was Spectrem 1.
Yeah, and I think you've taught me over the years that while we love our sealants, they can't solve everything. And that's why it's just terrific that we've got this whole range of pre-cured solutions.
Exactly. So let's take a look at a couple more things here. So simple seal, that was one of those solutions on that Puerto Rico Convention Center. It's going to be a product that you're going to use in lots of places. If you have a failed joint and you don't want to disrupt that substrate, it can be used there. It can be used around different types of connections, from a curtain wall, a window to wall, roof to wall. There's lots of ways where this simple seal can come in and truly be a hero on a project. And as we mentioned in the Puerto Rico Convention Center, this type of installation is going to save you time. So we just have two, I always love sharing time studies. So there's two there, the tear out and recaulk. We show a big reduction in time, and of course you're not disrupting that substrate. And then you've got a window to wall application on your exterior of your building. There's another time savings there. So just two of the many places this can go.
Yeah, not just time, Marcy. You know, on any tear out, you're really dealing with two things: safety, right? Because you got people with hook knives and tools that are, well, they're a handful.
Yep.
And the other is often that material that's in there can be considered hazardous.
Right.
So by leaving that in situ and leaving it in place, you're not, you know, the sheer cost of managing a hazardous job can exceed the total cost of a normal job.
That's a great point, Paul, because, and then if you're grinding it too, right? That if you're grinding it, you know, depending on what you're grinding, that's going to have a whole nother effect. I got a question yesterday from a design professional, and they said, we know sealants are great. Sealants come in a lot of different technologies. They're all over our buildings. How can we guarantee that they're installed properly? Is what he asked me. And I'm like,
Great question.
great question. Let's talk afterwards. I have some ideas.
Yeah.
But once again, that's where we like to look at too, is what are your points of concern? If you're doing a cutout and recaulk, there's lots of points of concern. We know it can be done. We have lots of great installers that can do that. So depending on your application, depending on what you're looking at, this might be an application that with less points of concern, because you don't have to do that cutout and recaulk. So great option there. And as always, we like to show a little bit more about it, and as it relates back to our test wall, which Paul mentioned earlier too. So when you're looking at these solutions, I want you to know and have that peace of mind that we validated this performance. We know that what's going to happen when you have wind loading up to 100 to 125 mile per hour winds, right? What is that going to do? What are those things that we need to be wary of? And if you are still concerned, then that's where we can bring you in and we can validate your specific system at our test wall. So it gives us a great opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah, I like that you brought up that last point. So it's not just our thinking, it's whoever's watching, right, Marcy? Whatever issues, concerns they have, come see us.
Come see us.
We'll mock it up for you, we'll run it, and we'll see what happens.
Absolutely. That's definitely something we always like to bring up and mention. And of course, with this particular extrusion, you've got so many different options that can really help remove some more of those points of concerns, right? So if you picture like a flat material, it's going to want to always be flat. So if you need to go up and over something or inside or outside corners, you can put notches in it to really allow that natural placement of these types of materials. So this is a great part of that simple seal product.
Yeah, and it's just one of our, we could go on for days.
I know, right?
All the little ways that we make these profiles work for you. These are so critical, right? Just where you put the notch obviously is critical. I think you'll show some other profiles in a few more minutes that where you show camber and angles and, you know, so should it have a camber of 43 degrees or 47? I just remember on the Puerto Rico job, that was a key thing we wanted to get on each of those edges was what was that angle? And just, we probably did 4 or 5 runs to just dial it into just the right angle.
Exactly, and that's once again where that 3D printing capability comes in, right? Let's print something, let's print a small sample, get it out to you. Let's make sure it's going to meet exactly what you need for that. So just a key part of these solutions. Paul mentioned earlier about, you know, that, I don't know if you used the word elegant this time, but you usually do. What is an elegant mode of failure, right? And that's what we're talking about when we talk about knotty tear. So this is just giving you some screenshots of what that means. Say your membrane got nicked. We're showing you exactly how you have to patch it, and then we demonstrated that repair. But let's take a look at this video, Paul, that just goes into that, showing what that means. So we're doing an elongation test here, where we're demonstrating that elongation. So we're gonna put a hole in it. We're gonna stretch it back to that 800% elongation, and that tear did not continue to propagate.
And other than simple seal, there's not a silicone that could do that.
Exactly. So Spectrem 1 was your sealant that has that same property, and then that's what you're going to adhere. One of your choices to adhere to that Spectrem simple seal. So once again, I think we could probably demonstrate that time and time again with just those capabilities. But It also solves a lot of those challenges that you might have on your existing structures where a material just wasn't able to either lay appropriately or stay bonded or handle or be resistant to the weather. And I like some of these pictures here. It's a little dark and gloomy and snowy. And the materials that were used just weren't able to handle it. That's why we went with this choice of using that Spectrem Simple Seal to be able to seal up and over all of those mullions, even incorporating the little bit of your anchoring system, your fastener there, and really give you a nice watertight solution. I think we have a couple other pictures, and that guy looks resilient, so I had to keep him in here. We had people on in a previous episode, and today is broadcast number 70, Paul.
Okay.
And this guy needed to come back because he certainly looks resilient.
Yeah, and this is another, I think, part of our definition of resilience is, the weather in which we're operating is becoming more and more volatile. And what that means is often for jobs like this, historically you want 3 to 5 days of good weather before you mobilize. And it's starting to become more and more, that's not going to happen. So can we enable you to work in very, very wide ranges of weather? And can you work in tight weather windows where maybe, you're in Florida, it rains every day at 2 o'clock, and so I want to work every day for 4 hours, right? So there's this whole concept of resilience in how do you get the system down, how do you do the maintenance?
Well, that's what I love about our feet on the street, because they'll talk to you about just that. When are you installing it? Where are you installing it? And what are your installation needs? Not only your installation needs, but your in-service needs too. So great system here for this project with resilient installers. And there's our feet on the street for this project right in our deal. So definitely an interesting project there, and how that solved another large project. The entire West Edmonton Mall atrium area. So we'll have to get that true number of feet we used. I can't remember. I know this is another one of your favorite projects. Once again, sealants were used time and time again to try to fix the leaky windows here. And this is occupied space. This is a residential tower. And we just couldn't get it to work with the sealants. And so we wanted to increase that useful life. Thank goodness for a great design professional out there that was able to come up with a solution with us. Simple Seal again.
Yeah, part of what I really like about this story, I think, Marcy, when we got engaged here, they were really well down the road of a whole window replacement project. I think probably budgeted around 15 million for this project. Probably would have taken 2 years or so, and they'd have had to displace the tenants floor by floor.
Yeah.
So I think the data on this got done in the summer, no tenant disruption, and for right around $1 million or less than $1 million, and a great long-term warranty.
So just being able to add that useful life to this building was obviously a great sustainable outcome, but you had so many occupants happy. That's another level of being able to provide.
Well, and all those windows would have just ended up in a landfill, right?
Exactly.
So here they are again, literally good as new. And the other cool thing, I mentioned this before on the Puerto Rico site, is 20, 25, 30 years from now, you need to do any maintenance on the after picture. All you got to do is just repeat, cut out whatever got damaged, replace it. So it's not only restored, it's permanently restorable.
Exactly.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool. And I love this one because this is kind of more of a hybrid approach. So we're using sealants and we're using a different type of gasket here, or extrusion, which is a cruciform. So just once again, tell us what's leaking. Let's work together and figure out, how do we make that fix? So this was a combination of both sealants and that cruciform to get this metal joinery in this window wall area.
Cruciform is a great example of our team's ability to innovate on whatever the geometry or system is you need. And I know you could probably do an hour presentation on cruciforms.
Yes, we could. We definitely could. And I would love to do that. I wanted to bring to you this one, occupied space below. I think this is a museum. Obviously, no one wants your windows to be leaking air and water, but sometimes it's even more critical. In this case, this wasn't a huge project, but it was certainly critical here in that before and after, with one more option of that restoration overlay effect. You can see there in the animation of showing how it goes up and over the metal and it goes glass to glass for your adhesion.
I like this too. If you look at your before picture, Marcy, you see the windows and the tower looking out over it.
Yeah.
So often too, it's a great aesthetic upgrade. And so people care, they're saying, all right, these are looked down upon, like in this case. And so the aesthetic upgrade of really just cleaning up the sight lines, like a wet product generally doesn't do such a great job of that, but these gaskets sure do.
They do. I think speaking of aesthetics, this is one of the top winners as it looks at from aesthetics perspective. You see what's going on the left with our 3D printed prototype to make sure you got the right size. Design professional let us know, all good from a structural perspective, leaking air and water. So we provided a custom extrusion, custom color, glass to glass, aesthetically pleasing, amazing new look, and air and water tight.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. We have a lot of case studies with the before and after, and you can see the job sort of going left to right on the wall.
Yeah.
And it's literally looking like a brand new building. And I don't think that's appreciated. Probably they do the job because they need things to become air and water tight. But I think people underappreciate the aesthetic upgrades.
Absolutely. And then and everyone who has to work or live in that structure is going to be so much happier about it, right? Yeah. So, and of course, we always love to talk about some historic ones too. So Columbia Law Library here, they used some putty. Putty glazing was something that was used in the 1800s. Not very flexible. When you talk about tensile strength, flexibility, it lives a long time, right? It can be durable for a long period of time, but it's not resilient in its ability to move, contract, expand and contract. So its mode of failure was not good. It caused a lot of leaks.
I always like this because it's an historic renovation where we met the requirements of whatever the historic regs are for this area, and it looks fantastic in that after picture. That's going to be ready to go for another 100 years.
And then here we did 2 custom colored gaskets, one on the inside, one on the outside. We used some sealants and some glazing tape. So once again, all of these are demonstrating a wide variety of opportunities. We've got a few more. These are some more case studies, and I just bring them up briefly here because there's a lot of maybe misconceptions or concerns when we think about what we're doing here. And each of these case studies are going to show you so many benefits and maybe knock out some of those misconceptions as it relates to what we're doing here. So all of these are on our YouTube channel, Paul, where you can watch this. This one in particular, they were worried about the sight line. So you can see there on that far right picture, that it's not going to interrupt the sight line. And as Paul mentioned before, there's feet that are encapsulating that sealant. So then you have something to tool against, something to kind of encapsulate the sealant, making sure everything looks nice and neat, even on the inside.
I'm glad you got Houston up there because I think the oldest facade restoration job I'm aware of is in Houston.
It is.
And probably, 35 years ago. So that's the other thing that gives a lot of people comfort is we've been doing this for a long time. And the 35-year one, I think, came up because they were looking at maybe doing a further upgrade at this point after 35 years. And we pulled out all the original drawings and geometry, and there we go. We're going to do another restoration.
Exactly. So lots of great ways that we can provide solutions. This is another episode we did about the Baltimore-Washington Airport and several other ones. In this case, this whole airline area, check-in spot, was not able to be used. So I don't know how many hundreds of square feet we're looking at right there, not being able to be utilized because that big atrium area was leaking, and our friends at Quality Walls and Windows was able to provide a customized solution using the restoration overlay and Spectrem Simple Seal, and of course our silicone sealants. Quality Windows and Walls also did this great, the library here in Baltimore, just to kind of show you those long extrusions that we provided for solutions. So you've got a long extrusion, so you have less connections you're working with. You've got the durability of a hydrometer silicone sealant. We're doing the colors that they needed. Another view of our 3D printer going on up there in the upper left, but just that great solution once again, getting this back to being air and water tight.
Yeah, these 2 case studies you just mentioned. The other thing that was cool was when we did the case study for it, our partners' ability to innovate about how they access the site.
Absolutely.
There was a lot of innovation in there that wasn't about our stuff. It was about site access to do it safely and to not disrupt the tenant.
Yeah, so absolutely. Great shout out there to our quality walls and windows customer. Great. He's definitely one that thinks outside the box in terms of providing these
Yeah,
solutions.
if you have a site that you think you can't access, that's somebody I would bring in every time.
Yeah, so that DC, Baltimore, Virginia area, and I'm sure beyond, if need be. Here's another one we always like to feature. The BECS guys out of Virginia worked on this project with us, and Ken Hope, the University Tower project.
Yeah.
So you remember this video, Paul? They called it leak chasing.
Yes, yeah, no, we've played this more than a few times, and this is just a great case study because it's an iconic building. It's really absolute top of the line Class A space, but it was leaking like a sieve, right? So back to you talked about people wearing hats and
their papers were getting wet on the inside of the building, Paul. That's not good.
So pretty cool that they were finally able to solve and put to rest what was really a blemish on just a great building.
Yeah, so this installer high rise, and then our friend Mark Howell worked on this with our feet on the street, Ken Hope, great solution there. And I think, Paul, you mentioned it already, but this is a great way to kind of slide into the end of our program today. But this is that project, you are right, lasted 35 years. So, and that was way beyond what we even predicted it would. So even better, and then, being able to pull those original notes to be able to provide what Sunbelt needed, and of course our consultant partner there, CDC and Brian.
Well, and the cool thing is it's permanently iteratively restorable, right? So I think in the case of a facade, if you say to somebody, hey, you're good for, it's like your wipers, right? So I don't think we're good for 35 years on our wipers.
No, I can't even imagine.
But it gives us comfort to know our wipers are there. Okay, I probably do mine every year. We're in Ohio, things get pretty aggressive out there. Yeah. But for a building owner to know we restored it, and 30, 35, 40 years from now, we're just going to restore it again and again and again. It gives you a lot of comfort that you don't have to go through incredibly expensive, disruptive facade replacement.
Exactly. And I know when we talked with Brian Hickey about this from CDC, he talked to us all about iterations, 3D printing mock-ups, doing a couple runs, making sure he's getting it right to what he needed it to be, and providing all that support throughout the project so that we can last a number of years, continue to have that building performing. So such a great road here through that whole situation of glass and glazing. Lots of information for you. So this is just a handful, Paul. I went on our YouTube channel and I just wrote in glazing, and there's so many of them. So a lot of the projects we talked about all had case study videos, and a lot of the applications we talked about have great how-to videos as well, like that gaskets versus wet seal. So, wet and dry, like you mentioned, a lot of different things about that custom gasket overlay, glazing solutions. What are you looking at, and how do you need to produce that exact solution for your project? But that's where your feet on the street are going to help you as well. So lots of opportunities there, as well as always, our Build Meets World provides a variety of different types of technical documents for you to support you as well. So last but not least, we always like to end it here, but most importantly, in the month of October, email me, how do you define resilience? What experience have you had, so that we can have that conversation? That's what we like. We like winding down with you on Friday and talking to you about your challenges and, of course, your solutions.
Yeah, my last word on resilience is if I can just start on Monday and make it to Friday, that's pretty resilient.
Exactly.
In these days of COVID and material shortages, and
well, yes, absolutely.
We're dealing with at least a couple of black swans at the same time. So we all need to be pretty resilient, and if we can get to Friday and hang out with our audience, we probably did okay this week.
Exactly, I think we did. So good job, everybody, and yeah, give yourself a round of applause. It's Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe, and we'll see you next week.
Take care.
Thanks.